Hey guys, I've got a question for you. How do you feel about other people telling you what to do? My guess is that you have strong feelings about that. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks in our series called In Charge. We're going to be talking about what it looks like to be in charge or to have someone in charge of us. And my hope is that this conversation might challenge the way that you think about authority. I think for a lot of us, when we think about somebody being in charge of us, we really don't like that. We think having somebody in charge of us or telling you what to do is annoying. Or, you might feel for yourself that you can make your own decisions and that you know what is best for you and you don't need somebody else telling you. And you might also be a person that just really loves your independence and you hate being told what to do. Or maybe you struggle with authority because you've had some bad experiences with authority figures. Maybe you've been on the receiving end of mean, harsh, unfair leaders that had a lot of power. Or you may have been hurt, yelled at, treated unfairly by people in positions of authority. Maybe you've seen lots of examples publicly of poor leadership or untrustworthy people in positions of power. And even though we know that that's not every person in charge, it makes you question almost every authority figure that you deal with in life. Or maybe you think authority figures aren't worth following because you really think they're kind of a joke. Like the people you see, in movies or on TV that are in charge are always being made fun of because they don't really seem to know what's going on. So why would anybody listen to them? Or maybe the authority figures in your life feel more like friends than people that are actually in charge. And that makes things a little confusing. Like one minute they're cracking jokes, making things fun, being super cool, and the next minute they're bossing you around and making you follow rules. That can be really confusing. Or maybe you don't really mind having somebody in charge of you. You're yeah, I'm in middle school. But you don't always love the rules, but you aren't necessarily fighting against them either. It almost makes things easier to have someone like a parent or a teacher or a coach just tell you what to do. No matter what you feel about the people in charge in your life, the reality is that authority is not only something we are all going to have to deal with in life, but it's actually something we all need. Without it, the world would be in total chaos. While we might yearn for complete and total freedom from rules, the absence of authority and rules or laws actually creates total chaos. I mean, imagine what it would be like if there are no rules for driving. No traffic lights, no speed limit, no stop sign. If there's just no common expectation of what you're supposed to do on a road. That's going to be incredibly unsafe. Or what if your school had no rules? You can just show up when you want, leave when you want, eat all the food in the teacher's lounge, skip the mile run in PE class, never do your homework. Now, at first, that sounds great in theory. But in reality, you would be doing that for years and years and years, and then this moment's going to come when you're going to be expected to head out into the world as an adult, and you don't know the most basic math or how to read. You have no real understanding of the world. That's not good. So my point is this: authority has its place in our world. It has a purpose. In fact, it's part of the way that God designed things to be. And because of that, it's something that we have to learn to navigate with wisdom. We have to learn how to deal with people that are in charge of us. Even when it's hard. Even when it's frustrating. Even when you feel like they don't deserve to be in charge. Even when we're not sure that they're handling their authority the right way. We have to learn to deal with authority. With so many different ideas of what authority is and isn't supposed to be, I think the best thing we can do is go back to the very beginning. So when God created the world, it was created with authority in mind. God made the stars, the sun, the moon, the water, the mountains, the flowers, the animals, and God had authority over all of that creation. God was in charge. But then God made humans. Adam and Eve were created and they were given authority over all of the earth. That means that as humans, we're in charge of taking care of the things that God made on earth. Being in charge was part of the plan for us. But we have to remember that with increased authority and power that comes with increased responsibility. So for thousands and thousands of years, people used their authority in all kinds of different ways. And we can read about that in Scripture. And what you'll find is that when you read the Bible, it very much mirrors what we see in society today. Some people were really great leaders, and some weren't. Some people really treated the people and the things that they were in charge of well, and some didn't. Some people followed the law, some didn't. And all throughout history, humans have been struggling to know what it looks like to use their authority in a good way. Then Jesus came to earth. At that time, religious leaders had a lot of authority. But when Jesus came in, he lived like he had a lot of authority too. In fact, he proclaimed it. Look at how one of his followers, Matthew, recorded it in the book of the Bible that we call Matthew. This is what it says. It says, Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. You can find that in Matthew chapter 28. So that's a pretty simple sentence, but it has a really big impact on our lives. Jesus wasn't just talking here. He's telling the truth. When he came to earth, Jesus came with the ultimate authority. He had the ability to do literally anything. Anything he wanted to do, he could do with the authority that God had given him. And a lot of the religious leaders probably anticipated that Jesus would use his authority to do things like make more rules or punish people who didn't follow the laws or only be kind to the people that believed in him. But I want you to pay careful attention to what Jesus does with ultimate authority. What does Jesus do when he can literally do anything? Well, he heals the sick and he treats women as equals. He forgives people's sins. He welcomes people that other people turned away. He told everyone that they were invited to believe in and follow God. Jesus never used his authority to make people feel hurt or less than him. Instead, he used his power to make their lives better. And I think that what that can teach us is this: Jesus is the example of good authority. He shows us what it looks like when a person with power and influence uses it in the best possible way, in a way that is honorable, inclusive, and loving, not abusive, divisive, and harmful. And that changes everything. Because no matter what our experience with authority has been in our lives, we can look to Jesus to understand what authority is truly supposed to look like. When we see what he did and how he lived, we get a glimpse at what it looks like when someone uses their power and influence for good. Jesus is the example of good authority. He's the example of an authority that we can trust and follow, even do our best to model our lives after. And when we're not sure how the people in charge in our lives are handling their authority, we can look to Jesus to be reminded of what real good authority can look like. When it comes to how we understand authority, Jesus changes everything. So how does this help us when it comes to dealing with the people in charge in our lives right now? How does knowing Jesus is an example of good authority help us with the authority that we have in our lives? Well, it shows us what good authority looks like for us. Think about what you know about Jesus. Think about the things you know about the way he lived, the things he did, and the way that he treated people. And then look for the same good in the authority figures in your life. That could be your teachers, your parents, your guardians, your coaches, your small group leaders, and other leaders around you. Whoever the authority figures are in your life, maybe you love the way that they use their authority, and maybe you don't. Either way, they're in charge. And one thing that can help you follow them is to look for the good in the way that they are leading. Look for the way they're leading like Jesus. No, they will not be healing the sick or raising people from the dead, and they're definitely not going to be perfect like Jesus was. But the authority figures in your life might be using kind words or giving you a second chance. They might be helping you at school or extending forgiveness when you mess up. Maybe they're treating everyone fairly and with respect. Look for the positive things about the way that they are using their authority. Now let me stop here and say that there is a difference between authority you don't want to deal with and authority that is being abused. When your mom asks you to take out trash and that makes you mad, she's not a bad authority. You just feel annoyed at what she's asking you to do. That doesn't make her a bad authority figure. But when someone is using their authority to abuse you, harm you, hurt you, or treat you in a way that makes you feel like you have no power to say no, that's different. Remember, Jesus used his authority for good. And when someone is using their authority over you or others to do things that aren't good, you need to speak up. If you are being harmed by someone in a position of authority, I strongly encourage you to speak to an adult that you trust. I recommend your small group leaders or myself. We're happy to help. We might not love the idea of other people being in charge, but it is a necessary part of life. Jesus shows us what healthy authority looks like. We can honor healthy authorities in our lives and follow Jesus' example for our own lives.